Well, welcome everyone and welcome Ashlee. I am so thrilled to have you here today because I deeply admire the incredible work you're doing to support children in the foster care system. And I've always had a heart for children. I love them. I teach Sunday school and I've often felt a pull to do something for those in foster care, but just really wasn't sure where to start. And so that's why I'm so excited about this conversation. And I know you're going to educate and inspire not just me, but all of our listeners as well. And so I truly believe God has a word for each of us through this discussion, and it's going to be a great blessing. So let's dive in. And thank you for being here, Ashlee.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners and just tell us about your family?
Sure. So my name's Ashlee Carroll. And first off, I'm saved by grace through faith in Jesus. And
Amen.
basically, that's why I'm equipped to do any and all good works that bring our Father glory. So I'm grateful for that. I've been a wife to Parker for almost 14 years. That keeps me on my toes often. And I know marriage is meant to make us holy, not happy. So
Oh, I just said that to someone yesterday, and I've been almost 34 years. So yeah.
okay, well, that's good to hear from someone who's walked it much longer than me. So I will just continue on that pathway.
Yeah.
I'm mom to two boys who are in elementary school, and then we have five bonus babes, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. I'm a published author of a children's book about foster care and currently the Foster Village board member and the Austin Ridge volunteer coordinator for foster care on all of our campuses. And I'm from Marble Falls originally, which is a small town outside of Austin. And I'm blessed that my family is still close by. So that's nice.
I
And I
bet.
graduated from, yes, they've been immense help.
Yeah.
Um, I graduated from Texas Tech in Lubbock, and that's where my husband and I met. And we moved here to Austin in 2011. So we've been Austinites since then. Basically, if you don't find us cheering on our boys at some sporting event, then you'll find us probably at home playing board games or playing with our two puppies.
Oh gosh, we love board games. My family, I have three kids, and we've played board games since they were itty bitty. So it's a
It's
great
the
family
best. It
time.
teaches them so many great life lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, we have two boys, so it's quite competitive at my house occasionally. So
Uh-huh.
we've learned to win and lose in playing these board games.
I have two boys and one girl, and we're all competitive. So I
Mhm.
get it. Very good. Very good. Well, so I guess let's start just by talking about Foster Village and
Sure.
um, what, what that does, what you do with them, and then we can move on into just explaining foster care.
Sure, absolutely. So Foster Village is a local nonprofit that started here in Austin in Dripping Springs, actually. It was really grassroots. It started with Crystal Smith and her family got licensed as foster parents and just basically immediately saw that there were major gaps in our foster care system and how we come alongside families and care for vulnerable children and their families. And so it started with just the simple idea of trying to truly equip families that are walking this road and to give them the tools and support that they need that they maybe are not getting through the state or through other programs. So basically, Foster Village is here to advocate, equip, and connect children and families that are walking this road of foster care. So basically, we equip families with tangible items needed. So that's foster families. When they get a child, oftentimes they come with nothing. We personally, our family has fostered 5 children over the past 4 years, and most of the time they come with literally the clothes on their back. And so we have had little bitties that have come in not a proper car seat or have come with just the car seat that the CPS investigator is using that they have to then go use with another baby. So now we don't even have a car seat for this baby. So just equipping families with those tangible resources, car seats, beds, clothing, things like that. And then we connect them with therapeutic support specialists that we have at Foster Village just to help them walk the road of foster care. Sometimes it can be isolating and there's a lot of trauma involved a lot of times. And so you just need extra tools and support. And so that's part of our heart for Foster Village too, is just to connect these families to these support specialists and really advocate for what's best for the whole family. And then the advocating piece is the last piece is just for community involvement beyond the system. So just rallying our communities here and other areas to come alongside the foster family, to come alongside the biological family or the kinship family, and just advocate for truly it takes a village
That's what I was about to
kind of
say.
mentality. So yes,
Yes.
that's what we really advocate for. We also advocate at a local, state, and federal level as well.
Okay. That's what I was about to say. I mean, it takes a village for all of us, but I'm sure when you're doing foster care, it's so unfamiliar and I mean, I know people who've done it and I applaud it. I think it's amazing, but it's hard. So you need that support. And I'm sure, do you help go into the schools and things like that? I used
Yes,
to be a
we
public
have.
school teacher, so I can think,
Oh, I love that.
yeah,
So yes, so you've definitely intersected with foster care for sure. As a school teacher, we see that a lot too, and definitely come alongside families to help them. Sometimes having to navigate what you understand is like their 504 plan or an IEP or an ARD meeting or things like that. And just getting those kids the services that they need that they maybe didn't have before. So definitely we have educational specialists that we help when the child is school aged. So absolutely.
okay, great. That's very important. So, okay, let's talk about why we need foster care. I mean, boiling it down to the nitty gritty, I mean, we kind of know, but what would you say to that?
Well, we need foster care because our world is broken. And
Um,
at a cellular level, that's basically where we start at. We're all fallen sinners. So just the fact that we're not getting it right. And a lot of times it's, these families that just lack support. And so truly the need is for supportive families to come alongside other families. What we've seen when we've gone upstream with this problem is as I love to quote Alan Graham on this from Community First, he says that everything basically has started at the catastrophic breakdown of family. And we desperately see that in the foster care system. There's a breakdown of the mother and father together. There's a breakdown of generational trauma that's continuing on. A lot of times our families have been in foster care themselves and now their children are in foster care. So we see this generational cycle that's just not being broken, and we're just not coming around these families well enough. And so these kids are falling through the cracks and they're getting removed. And so we do desperately need foster care because we need to keep kids safe, but we also need to do better, I think, to equip and connect with these families earlier on.
I mean, as Christians, we are to care for the widows and the orphans, right? And in some sense, they're in a stage of being orphans because they're neglected. Their family can't provide for often their basic needs, which is why they're being pulled, right? And
Absolutely.
and if we can't support these kids, it's a crisis. But on the other hand, if we can all play a part in it, right, then we can really make a difference and bring Jesus into a place of real darkness. So it's so good. And how did you get involved with foster care originally?
Yes. So just to echo your sentiments too, like this is God's heart to care for widows and orphans. And today in our world, these are the widows and the orphans. This foster care embodies that. So often we see it's single mothers and these kids who don't have an active role parent in their life currently. And a lot of times, thankfully, we're so grateful and we advocate for this, for the biological families to get the support they need and for the children to be reunified to them.
Okay.
That's always the state's number one goal. That's also our heart, is for biological families to feel supported and be reunified, because ultimately God created that family. And so as long as we can come alongside and support and it's safe, it's the best place for a child to be, is in their own family. It's the least amount of trauma and it just is the way that God designed it. So that's also our heart. Two of my favorite verses that come to mind I want to share with you. First is in Isaiah 1:17. It says, "Learn to do right, seek justice, defend the oppressed, take up the cause of the fatherless, plead the case of the widow." That's one. And the other one that I love is in James. It's in James 1:27. "Pure and undefiled religion before God the Father is to look after orphans and widows in their distress and to keep oneself unstained from the evil of this world." So to me, those show God's heart is truly for these, the least of these. And we hear that in the Bible often. And so the more that I spend time in the Word and the more that I seek God, I see that his heart is for foster care, is for children that are vulnerable and families that are vulnerable here in our city and around the world.
Yeah. And if we're all doing our part as we're called to do, then we really shouldn't have such a foster care crisis. But we're afraid of it. I mean, let's just be honest. And a lot of Christians, we want to pour money into it, but to actually sacrifice and take on foster care, oh, that's another thing. So this is where I want to hear how you got involved with foster care.
Absolutely. I love what you just said. That's so true. So the way I got involved is my mom and my aunt were CASA volunteers, and CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate. And basically, it is a volunteer opportunity in many cities around the U.S. So you can just look up, Google your city's name and then CASA, and you can find opportunities to serve in that capacity. So basically what you do as a CASA is you get a little bit more training than usual in this capacity for volunteer opportunity. And then you are actually sworn in by a judge, and you speak in court on behalf of children that are in the foster care system. So you speak basically to what the best interest of the child is, which is a really neat thing, because in a courtroom, everybody else is paid to be there and you are obviously not. And so I feel like in my experience as a CASA, I was a CASA for about 7 years, the judge relies heavily on the information the CASA is gathering from the child and from those in the child's life. And I've just seen amazing things happen in my role as a CASA advocating for children.
Is there an age limit for that, or it can be anyone?
It can be anybody. I think you'll have to check with your local CASA program, but I think you have to be 18 and up. You just come and register for a training, get sworn in by a judge, and then you start taking on cases, which are usually a foster care case, lasts anywhere from 12 months to 2 years. And so you're on the case for that amount of time. And so that's initially where I saw the foster care system up close and understood more of just the generational cycles that need to be broken, and just all of the ways that people are struggling in their families, and just the need for support. And so through that, God really opened doors and shifted my heart and my husband's and our children's and our family's lives to become a foster family. And so that was our next step. And we have been so blessed to foster 5 kids over the last 4 years. They ranged in age from 6 months up to 3 was our oldest one. So we had little bitties, and it was just, quite an experience, I will say. But I am so grateful for my time as a CASA before that, because it really shifted my heart, and God helped me to see that I was there to support the whole family and not just the child. So I'm grateful for that opportunity.
So back to that just a tiny bit, the CASA thing, because I've looked into this. And so when you talk about the training, do you have to spend time with the child and get to know the child and their specific situation before you step into the courtroom? I mean, I get this horrible vision of, being thrown a file and then just stepping out there.
That is the beauty of the CASA program. You are well equipped with training and understanding what your role is. And then, yes, as a rule of thumb, they ask that you see the child once a month. A lot of times I found that I just naturally was seeing my child, 2 or 3 times a month, just in building a relationship with them. And then, speaking to whoever's home that they were living in and their teachers and things like that. So and then you stay on the case for the duration of the case, which often is 12 months to 2 years.
Okay, great. Thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so did you get one child at a time, or did you ever have multiple children?
Yeah. So great story. Our very first placement, they called us we had just been licensed. We were 7 days into having a license, and they called us for one little baby boy, and we were like, yes, absolutely. And then before they got off the phone, they were like, oh gosh, actually he's part of a sibling set of 4 children, and so there's 3 sisters. And we were like, oh, that's probably not going to work for our family. We already have 2 children who at the time were 2 and 5. And so we were like, maybe we could do 2. And they were like, yes, we would love to have the youngest and then the next youngest. So we got our baby Kyson and then his sister Ava. And then the 2 other sisters stayed together and went to another home, which is really hard just in the child welfare system to keep siblings together. And it's heartbreaking to see them have to split if they're already splitting off from their parents. But like I said, that's what worked for our family. And so we just kind of had to what God tells us, let your yes be your
Mhm.
yes, your no be your no.
Mhm.
So we took two when in reality we thought we were going to take one. And so our boys woke up and they were shocked that they had two new siblings the next morning.
Wow.
So
And
we
how,
had two then, and then we had one after that. It's like two siblings and our first two, and then our third, fourth, and fifth were all just single children.
and how long what was the average amount of time you had those kids?
I would say, well, our shortest was 10 days because his grandmother wanted to get him, but just needed to get some things in order for her to be able to take him, which was great. So
Yeah.
we called that our 10 days of fun because we literally were like, well, he's only here for a short time. So we just took him and did a ton of fun things. It was in the summer. So that was super fun. And then our longest one was our last little guy, and it was 9 months. And he reunified to his mom. And thankfully, by the grace of the Lord, all of our children have reunified to their family. So
Uh,
we're very
uh,
grateful for that. Mhm.
that's such a blessing. And
Mhm.
does Foster Village reach the parents as well? Is that something, to try to share the gospel with them and things like that?
Absolutely. So that is, our heart just for vulnerable children and family is ultimately to know Jesus. I mean, I think we all know we can equip them and give them tools and advocate for them, but ultimately for them to know the Lord is the best gift that they can receive and the most healing that they're going to
Right.
receive. So absolutely, we walk alongside biological families as an organization with Foster Village. And so also when kids reunify to their parents, we send them with the things that we collected or gathered as the foster family. But in addition, so many times Foster Village shows up and, these moms are getting a new apartment or something. And so we'll get them beds. We'll maybe try to get them a couch or kitchen utensils or cleaning supplies, things that they're just going to need that are basic items to support them and to help them have the best start that they can have. We obviously always invite our own biological families to church with us just to hear the gospel and just to be around other people who love Jesus and love them. So
This is such a great ministry. I'm so amazed. And I hope, we have listeners all over the country, and I hope that there are similar ministries in other cities, because I can just see the incredible work that you guys are doing. And so what has God taught you through
mm,
all of this experience,
oh,
and your
so much.
family too?
Yes. One caveat that I want to add to what you just said, which I thank you for that. That was so kind. By the grace of the sweet Lord, Foster Village has affiliate locations all over the US. And
Okay.
so this model that started here in Austin has now been replicated. It's a proven model. And so other communities have seen, oh my goodness, they fill in the gaps so well for foster families and biological families and support these families and kids. And so we've taken that. And so we have an affiliate model that's gone out to a lot of the US.
Okay. That's so good to hear. Praise the Lord. Love
Yes.
that.
So back to what you were asking about how we feel like, what has God taught our family? Ultimately, he's taught us trust, which
Mm.
I know through any change in our own lives or our family's lives, the foundation of that is trusting in the Lord and his plan and knowing his sovereignty. And so I think he's refined our trust in him through saying yes, A, to foster care, and then B, to each of the children that we said yes to. We absolutely had to say no to some children. It wasn't a best fit for our family. And through each phone call we get, we always stop and pray and ask the Lord, what do you have for us? Is this for us?
Yeah.
Gonna learn to hold it with open hands. And he's also taught me as a mom to hold my own children open to him and to know that no matter what I do or plan, ultimately his plan is best.
Oh, Ashlee, that just makes me want to cry too, because I know that that's always a barrier for people to take on foster kids, as they're worried about their own kids and how it's going to impact them. And we always think the negative, and we hear the stories, and yet every step of the way you're praying, and the support you're going to get because you're affiliated with a great organization and you have that confidence. And so you're praying and you're hearing from the Lord, and you can trust that whatever he brings into your home is good. Just like you said, I love that so much. And that's a lifelong lesson for all of us as mothers.
Amen. And Candace, you're so right about that. Like just the concept of understanding that he is a good father to us. And so in the ways that we think we are a good parent to our own children, he is an even better father to our children. And so I tell people all the time, the number one thing that we feel like has been a blessing to us as a family from foster care that we didn't expect is that our children's lives are forever changed in a way that we could not teach them that.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And that
mean, that heart,
only God can do.
you're creating a heart of service, compassion in them, and God is fostering it. Let me use that word.
Mhm. Yes.
And they're gonna. This is lifelong that they'll have. It's such an example, and I just love it. It gives me goosebumps, honestly, of just serving the Lord. I'm just so amazed, and so I'm so glad. And that's such a great lesson, is to learn that trust for our kids. And so we've already talked a little bit about how Foster Village fills in the gaps and for vulnerable kids. So why don't let's talk about, many say the problem is too big, too messy, the lifestyle too scary, the changes. What would you say to encourage a family or others through the fear of all the things that go with fostering?
Absolutely. Because fear is a fact. Sometimes, even though it's not a fact, it feels like a fact in our brains and hearts and minds. So I think the number one thing that I tell people is to pray. It's a two-part concept. I think it's prayer and proximity, but I want to talk about praying first. So we know that prayer changes things. God speaks to our hearts to be moved, and then he has a plan for our life and for our families. And so as we lean in and pray to him and spend time with him, we start to see and conform to his plan and his purpose for our life, less of what we want and our flesh desires and more of what he wants. So although, yes, it's messy and hard, I've seen tenfold the blessings that have come and the fruit that has come from our obedience. And that started with prayer. Very first, when Parker and I both came to each other, we had both been praying, and I had been praying specifically for foster care. And so that's where this started. God planted that seed in my heart, and it grew over time. And that was from spending time in prayer with him. So prayer is where you start. And then you add in proximity. So prayer and proximity are how God has always revealed his heart to me. And I think maybe for your listeners, this might resonate as well. So drawing closer to him and moving towards wherever he lays on your heart often shows us what the next right step should be. But if we haven't moved forward due to fear or anxiety, then oftentimes that's disobedience. And I think as Christian women, that's hard for us to swallow sometimes.
Yeah.
So I would say start with prayer, start with proximity, move towards whatever God is calling you to. And for some of you, that might be checking out foster care. So then you could see, how does it impact my community? What's happening where I live? Maybe see some organizations that are already doing work and start by volunteering there. Asking, hey, how can I come and help out once a week? Can I bring my kids to volunteer? Check with your church. Maybe there's a way your church is already mobilizing towards foster care or towards vulnerable families and children. And so just jump in and get involved there. But I think we absolutely have to start with prayer and asking God. And I absolutely know for a fact he will show you.
Yeah. I love that you're talking about how we can honestly miss the blessing when we're not being obedient. And I've seen that time and time again throughout my walk with the Lord, that when I step into big, scary things, that he equips me and he comes alongside and brings the people I need. And it's so faith building. And I don't know if you know who Tara Lee Cobble is, but I listen to the Bible
Absolutely.
recap. Yeah, I'm doing, a little promo for Tara Lee because she's amazing. And I love how she ends every single one of her lectures, or not lectures, but summaries, is he is where the joy is.
He is where the joy is. Amen.
And this is, I'm sure, an incredibly joyful experience when you see the life change and the love. I mean, you've been blessed to see those families reunited. Even if it doesn't turn out the way you hope it would, God is still working.
He is. Amen.
Yeah, he can do things that we can't even imagine. So we just don't need to be afraid, and we're afraid in so many ways. So thanks for sharing all that. I love that. And prayer being the cornerstone. So not everyone can be a foster parent. We want to pray and we feel drawn to the foster system to help in some way, but we don't feel like we can be a parent. How else can we get involved?
Absolutely. So as we already talked about, CASA is a great program to get involved with. Also, number one, you can always be praying for foster families. You can pray for foster children. We will accept all the prayers that you would like to send our way. It's hard and isolating sometimes, but just the fact that we know that people are praying is so uplifting. As someone who is in it, I've seen the power of prayer. So that's huge. So I think pray for foster families, for foster children, for biological families, and also for frontline workers, people like CPS that are doing the hard work day in and day out. The turnover for CPS jobs is high and burnout is real. So just praying for all of the people that are involved in the child welfare system is also huge. I think learning more also is good. Maybe attend a foster care informational session to hear more about what it looks like directly in your own community, or to find a great organization like Foster Village that's already doing the work that you can say, hey, we'd love to come and volunteer, and maybe bring your children to help volunteers too. And if you don't have time to volunteer, maybe just making a donation to one of these great organizations. And then I would also say it's proximity again. Do you know a foster family? Do you know a kinship family? Do you know a struggling family? Offer to bring them a meal, drop off some groceries, and invite their family over to your family's house to play or to eat or to have coffee. Just, being the hands and feet of Jesus, basically.
Yeah, supporting them.
Is huge. And I think supporting them is the best tangible way to be involved, even if you're not volunteering in an organization or being a foster parent. There's so many ways that are meaningful. And it takes all of us, because it takes a village.
So good. And with that, I will just, as we wrap up, is there anything else that you would want to add that from your experience, or just something that would encourage moms today?
I think that oftentimes we overlook just the immense blessing and the immense calling that we have as mothers in our own home. And so for me, just starting with the reminder of I'm first called to be a Christ follower, a wife, and a mother to my own family, and doing that well and leaning in and spending time with the Lord every morning and asking him, Lord, how do you want me to be more like you today? And giving me eyes to see and ears to hear, and allowing him to lead you and show you what he has for you.
You are a wise, wise woman. That is so good. I thank you so much for your time, Ashlee. And I will put the Foster Village information in our show notes. I appreciate, God bless you for what you're doing, and best wishes.
Thanks so much, Candace.